That's wrong. You're wrong. To support you, sir. You're wrong.
Business owners and my fellow citizens and my customers and my prospective customers, my name is Daryl Guberman. I know you're kind of aghast at the communist China flag. Behind me and underneath, behind it, is the American flag. Well, there's a certain symbolism that I'm going to expose to you today, business owners. I'm going to expose to you a chairman of the American National Standards Institute, a Russ Chaney, left me an audio file because I exposed an impropriety in 2019. And he said, half a nut, fuck you. That's what ANSI says by him being a chairman. I've been involved with corporate America. There's certain code of conducts and ethics that you have to go through on an annual basis that, you have to have a certain decorum, a certain way to hold yourself and present yourself in public, because any slippage, like half a nut, fuck you, is a black eye on that organization. We have a very special guest here. We have Alejandro Mayorkas, the Homeland Security Chief, and here he is. He came here today from Washington. He got a little bit upset when he saw the Chinese flag, but I'm sure on his lapel where he has the American flag, if you took some alcohol or you took some water, it'll probably come out to be the Chinese flag. And we're going to show you why. Why did we get the Department of Homeland Security? I am going to show you why, because they sit on ANSI's board. In fact, there is a Philip Thompson, who is a representative of the Department of Homeland Security, who sits on ANSI, getting paid to sit there. And he's a standards, we'll get to that, was a standards organization manager or whatever. And what ANSI does is they pick certain people out of these out of corporations and also federal agencies to sit on ANSI's board and to be compensated. We're going to put you down, Alejandro, and we're going to continue. So you have Philip Matson, okay? And he is director at large. In June of 2022, I placed a 54-page document into submission at ANSI because they had open enrollment. So why not? Give it a shot. Because right now, if you look at their mission statement, after what Russ Chaney said, it's problematic. And I wanted to get in there not only to change this mission statement or possibly mantra, but I wanted to get in there to represent the small mom and pop shops that are not represented, very rarely are they, on ANSI's board. I figured that I could be a conduit, a representative for those small mom and pop shops who are the backbone, the meat and potatoes of supplying materials to corporate America that sit on ANSI, like Lockheed Martin, like Boeing, like United Technologies, like many other GE, etc., Microsoft. They are the bread and butter of those organizations. So why not have somebody as a conduit that's going to assist those smaller companies be recognized by the larger companies and have a dialogue, because that's the toughest thing. I've been out there now for 11 years, and it's very problematic for the small guy to get to the larger OEM to talk to them, because there's very rarely anybody around to talk with, and those are the things that I've heard about. So what I want to do is I want to get Alejandro back again and introduce myself. I introduced myself earlier to him. I might as well introduce him to me on camera. My name is Daryl Guberman, Alejandro. I've been involved with quality for 40 years. Aerospace, medical implants, medical materials, printing and plastic distribution, where I dealt with everyone under the sun in industry, all kinds of them, medical, automotive, aerospace, etc. And I opened up my business in 2011 as a consultancy. I was asked to split my company in two, became a registrar, fully accredited, and we became a competitor to ANSI-ASQ-ANAB. We will get into this very shortly. As you heard at the beginning, that was Mr. Dave Levy, a Region 3 director, who on audio and who on video said that ANAB had no problem with what we're doing. In fact, we support you, sir. And that was just a mere 2 years after I opened up my business. The reason why we have you here is because of Russ Chaney and because of your organization, your federal agency sitting on ANSI and being controlled and manipulated by Communist China from 2015 to 2021 and years back, because the gentleman who's there, the Communist National Zhao Jinwu, who we will show you, has been involved with our quality since 1994. You probably know none of this, and rightfully so. You've got your own thing to go. But when your organization has somebody who's getting financially compensated for their work with ANSI on top of their federal salary, there's something that stinks, and stinks bad. So we put this in. We put the 54-page document in. 16 out of 30 customers responded and sent letters to ANSI concerning what we do and how we, my basically letters of recommendation. What was an unbelievable maneuver, though, is I had to answer 9 questions. And during those 9 questions, they also, Joe Bathia sent us a form letter. And in the form letter, it says, click on here because you can get to the code of conduct and all the rest. And I read it. I read everything about code of conduct, about following it, about the code of ethics, all the rest of that. Something that I guess Mr. Chaney, Russ Chaney, did not read. So I answered those 9 questions. What we can do to facilitate ANSI's desires and needs and pursue, not only in the United States, but to pursue their points and push their agenda outside the realm of not only the United States, but into the world. So here's Daryl Guberman wanting to get on the board, wanting to change this because that is not good. I hope that the Department of Homeland Security's personnel don't say that around the office. That would be kind of unprofessional. But we wanted to be that conduit for the small mom and pop shop. In fact, we said it in many of our questions that we answered. We saw that at the bottom, it stated after the questions, it said, "The committee appreciates your interest in serving in an ANSI leadership position and your willingness to provide us this additional information. Sincerely, Russ Chaney, Chairman of the ANSI 2022 Nominating Committee." And Alejandro, I want to play for you his audio file. We're going to play for this for you, and here it is.
This is Russ Chaney. Please leave a message and I'll return your call as soon as possible. Record your...
Yes, he did say that, Alejandro. You can hear that perfectly. Half a nut, fuck you. He was the chairman of ANSI in 2019 when he said that. He's now the chairman of the nominating committee in 2022. Do you think he's going to be a demonstrative manager and call me and say, Daryl, congratulations, you're on the board? As that conduit for the small mom and pop shop would be a benefit for ANSI. Now they're probably going to take that idea and run with it. That's what many times these companies do. But we sent a letter to Joe Bathia concerning that and the recording. He sent it up to his attorney, Jameson Carroll of Carroll and Weiss in Atlanta, Georgia. And Daryl Jameson Carroll said, "After analysis, we are unable to identify any harassing or objectionable content in the brief audio file provided." Well, what do you think about that? I think there's something objectionable about that. Don't you think so, Alejandro? I think so. But anyway, we're going to continue on. In 2013, as I told you, I was giving a speech at the American Society for Quality, who owned ASQ, owned ANAB, the American National Credit Board, 50% in 2013, and also ANSI owned ANAB, 50%. The American National Standards Institute owned ANAB, 50%. So you had 100% there. I had 50% approval because he said that there's no restriction on you doing business unaccredited or accredited, and we are accredited. And as I said before, ANAB has no problem with what you're doing. In fact, we support you, sir. So we had 50% acceptance. In 2016, Randy Doherty, the vice president of ANAB, the chairman of the IAF Incorporated in Delaware, the International Accreditation Forum, just remember that for future because we're going to show you some more of that. He was also the principal on the IF Tax Forum, 990 Tax Forum. He wrote us and he invited us, Alejandro, to join either ANAB or IF, and that's 2016. Mind you, what's coming up, Alejandro, is why we never joined, nor we wouldn't. And that's why I have the communist flag, the CCP flag behind me, overshadowing our wonderful United States flag, because he invited us. And I'm going to show you why we didn't join, nor would we. In the same letter, we got the other 50% approval from ANAB itself. Because, as I said, Randy was the vice president of ANAB, the chairman of the IAF, okay, and also sat on the IAF's tax report. He said, but we recognize and accept. When he said, but we recognize and accept, that can be twisted by any attorney. It could be, it might be, it should be, it could be. It would be a very poor excuse if an attorney said that that is an acceptance. It is. By him saying recognize and accept, it is an acceptance. So we have the other 50% without joining them, nor would we. He said, but we recognize and accept that there are conformity assessment bodies and accreditation bodies such as your body and your accreditation body that is not part of the IAF-ILAC structure. We went on further, and he sent us in a letter when he was the vice president of ANAP, chairman of the IAF. He should know. He basically gave an explanation of what an IAF MLA is. And you can see right down below, an IAF multilateral agreement organization. You can see that Iran and Pakistan is part of the IAF, and they are equivalent in accreditation to ANAB, which is very problematic in the equality world because, as you know, Iran and Pakistan both admitted to harboring some of the terrorists of 9/11, and Pakistan harbored Osama bin Laden. What makes matters worse, Alejandro, is this. You also had North Korea on board, and you also had Libya at a time, but they got their certificate taken away, not because of quality issues, but because of lack of payment. You have Iran and Pakistan, and I say this not for the people, but I say this for the politicians, the leaders. You have them sitting on the IAF, incorporated in Delaware, an American company, right over by Lockheed Martin, right over by ANSI-ASQ-ANAB, and you'll see that coming up. The worst thing, too, is that Lockheed, at the time, they could vote on policy because they were an associate member. Lockheed Martin in 2009 got their data taken for the F-35 fighter. In 2012, a division of United Technologies got their data taken by China, and that's Sikorsky aircraft. You also have the factor that in 2015, Lockheed Martin purchases Sikorsky aircraft for $9 billion, maximum amount of money for a raped, technologically non-advanced company because of that. And you also have the factor in the Connecticut Mirror. There was an article that was written that said, with China's okay, Lockheed Martin closes in on the purchase of Sikorsky aircraft. One of the worst things, Alejandro, is that you have these senators and congressmen in the state of Connecticut, Rosa DeLauro, Richard Blumenthal, Chris Murphy, and Jim Himes, all compliment Lockheed Martin for working with communist China. It's in the article, except it doesn't blatantly say their names. It says Connecticut lawmakers compliment Lockheed Martin with working with an international regulator, communist China, thus the red flag and the United States flag beneath it. So Randy sent us a letter in 2014, March, and I know we're going back in time, but in order for you to see how metastasized, how rotten this is, you have to go back in time. Most people don't want to remember. Well, you have to remember, because if you don't remember, you're going to repeat history worse than what it is, worse than what it was. So Randy wrote us, and he said this about an IAF MLA. An IAF MLA, multilateral arrangement or agreement organization, works to facilitate global trade and vision of certified once accepted everywhere. And as we see that time and time again, that statement should be changed almost like the mission statement that Russ Chaney told us about, ANSI being half a nut fuck you. When they say certified once accepted everywhere, it should be certified once rejected everywhere. Look at Boeing, for example. The failure with the 737. They have recalls, or not recalls, but they have quality issues with the Boeing 777, 787. And they sit on ANSI. It's a long story. I'm not going to get into it at this juncture, but we're going to continue. You also have Pfizer, who skipped quality processes, Johnson & Johnson, who skipped quality processes and standards, and they are accepted once, rejected everywhere. You also have recalls in automotive. So the IAF-MLA works to facilitate global trade and vision of certified once, accepted everywhere. IAF-MLA signatories are obligated to recognize certificates accredited by other IAF-MLA signatories as equivalent. So, a company with an ISO 9001 certification that is accredited by the China National Accreditation Services, CNAS. The IAF-MLA signatory in China is equivalent to an ISO 9001 certificate accredited by ANAB. And as I showed you that in Randy's letter, we went on further and found out that ANSI-ASQ-ANAB are underwriters for both IAF, the International Accreditation Forum Incorporated in Delaware, and also ILAC, the International Laboratory Accreditation Cooperation. Alejandro, this is what an underwriter is. I'm not going to go through it. I'll hold it here for a second. The thing about ANSI-ASQ-ANAB and quality in general, they talk about impartial oversight. Now, as I told you, I wrote these guys in 2019. All I wanted was an apology for Russ Chaney leaving me a message on the phone, half a nut, fuck you. As you see, the lawyer Jameson Carroll pushed it off. I didn't hear it. I didn't look at it. I didn't know it. It sounded like another Jackie Mason. That's what they do. They talk about impartial oversight. You know what impartial oversight would be? For them to actually call me in and say, Mr. Guberman, we're sorry. Or written a letter and say, Mr. Guberman, we're sorry. It was a slip. But they don't want to admit to it because there is something disgusting going on. And we're going to show you what the DHS is involved with. Also, what they also do is they use a terminology that we found out through many years of looking into quality with all the different acronyms, current good manufacturing practices. So that's GMP or CGMP. You also have IAF, ILAC, UKAS. You have all these acronyms, and if you're not in the quality business, and many times if you are, you get confused with all this. So this word that we're looking for and we found is obfuscation. The action of making something obscure, unclear, or unintelligible, just like voluntary consensus standards. Now we go into the brass tacks here. This is going to be a long video, but you have to see this, business owners, because Department of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas, his agency, I think, agrees with Russ Chaney's disposition in 2019. You have ANSI, the American National Standards Institute, is a private not-for-profit, non-governmental agency or corporation, not an agency, corporation, that has federal agencies and corporations on board. In 2015, Alejandro, you had Randy Doherty, Vice President of ANAB, Chairman of the IAF. He is also the principal on the IAF tax form. He handed over leadership of the IAF Incorporated in Delaware to this communist Chinese national Zhao Jinwu, who is also, at the time, the chief executive of the China National Accreditation Services. Zhao Jinwu by the way, Zhao Jinwu was also, he's been involved with our quality since 1994, Alejandro. That doesn't sound too good, because he is mandated by his country of origin, Communist China, CCP, to take your data through the China National Accreditation, China National Intelligence Law, Article number 7. You have ANSI, who took over complete control over ANAB in 2018. You have federal agencies and corporations on board. Also, in China, you have 10 different registrars that can issue a ANAB accredited certification. Alejandro, here is Zhao Jinwu in Wuhan, China in 2017, handing an ISO 17025 certification for laboratory accreditation. You're going to find out when I show this to you that a Ms. Pamela Sale, the Vice President of Accreditation for Laboratories, said that there is no protocol in these laboratories. So when they say that the virus probably could be possibly released from this facility in Wuhan, China, Pamela Sale brings it to fruition and gives substance to those words. So, also, you have the factor that Anthony Fauci, who sits on the NIH, Alejandro, the NIH, CDC, USDA, FDA, Johnson & Johnson, and Pfizer. I'm using those as the examples of members of ANSI. They sit on ANSI. And you have Anthony Fauci, who was inquisitioned by Rand Paul just several months ago concerning gain-of-function research. And Anthony Fauci said, I have no clue about gain-of-function research. Well, here's the clue. This came out of a China English technical magazine. And this was from 2017, between May 17th and 19th, 2017. There was a second workshop in Wuhan, China, okay, between the United States and China that gave, here it is. The first one is gain of function. The workshop will focus on 5 sessions. The first one is gain of function research. So you had Anthony Fauci lying. The worst thing too is that if you look in the background of Boeing, who sits on ANSI, they fudge documentation. They were caught by the FAA, who they sit by, as a matter of fact. You also have Kobe Steel, who also fudged documentation. We have this documentation. We're not just telling you this to tell it to you. The funniest thing is, though, we have Joe Bathia here. Joe Bathia gave a speech at the Association of Equipment Manufacturers. I'm going to let you listen to what he said, because he said this. Here it is. He said, would you really want to have your competitor dictate the future of how you do business? And that competitor, where is it? That competitor, do you really want your competitor to dictate the future of how you do business? And that competitor could be somebody not just from the US, but somebody from China, somebody from Europe, somebody from another part of the world. And let me just tell you something. This was in 2016. China had already taken over the IAF, where ANSI-ANAB sits, okay? And they sat there, and if you don't believe me, here it is. ANSI and ANAB. So he was lying, wasn't he? He was lying to them. China had already taken over the IAF, where ANSI and ANAB sat. To go on further, he gave a speech. Now that's in March of 23rd, 2016. In August, several months later, he was giving a speech at the American Society, at the American National Standards Institute, okay, about strategic standardization. He said, would you really want to have your competitor dictate the future of how you do business? You need to be engaged. It sounds like the same audio file where they spliced in the other saying. So we have it. We're going to let you listen to it, let you listen to both of them and look at both of them, because this is unbelievable. Joe Bathia, again, quality out of control.
You really want to have your competitor dictate the future of how you do business, and that competitor could be somebody not just from US, but somebody from China. Your competitor dictate the future of how you do business. You need to be engaged.
You need to be engaged. Well, it looks like they have a lot of engagement there, because China, ANSI-ANAB sat on the IAF, controlled by China since 2015. So Joe, maybe he was playing stupid, just like the lawyer. Also sitting on ANSI's board is ANAB, who they took over in 2013. And as I told you, Iran and Pakistan have been on the IAF. And the worst thing, again, is they're sitting by at least 2 American companies, ANSI and ANAB, and also Lockheed Martin, our main military supplier. And look at this. Now we're going to get on to your business there. Where did you go, Alejandro? We're going to get onto your business, Alejandro, because I think it's very important that you see this personally. I think he took off, possibly. But it's very important that Alejandro sees this. Oh, here he is. Okay, sitting on ANSI's board is the Department of Homeland Security. Okay, Department of Homeland Security. We're going to show you this now, because this, we did a video on it, and we'll show you. In September of 2017, this is the front of the website of the Department of Homeland Security. But on page 2, when you clicked it, you see an advertisement for Randy Doherty of ANSI-ANAB or ANSI-ASQ, and he is the vice president here in 2017 being advertised on the Department of Homeland Security. The thing that is bad here, business owners, is that this is a private, not-for-profit concern. It is a private enterprise. I didn't think that private enterprise, it's like if Daryl Guberman advertised in the Department of Homeland Security. The reason why is because they have a member of the Department of Homeland Security getting financed by ANSI, and we're going to get to him, Phil Matheson, real quick. So what happened is I exposed this. Within 3 months, Randy was taken down. This was page 1, as I showed you. This is the Randy page. It looks the same, correct? Page 2, when you clicked it back in 9/8/2017, that's page 2. When you clicked page 2 in 4/8/2018, just several months later, it looked like this. It's a change because we caught them, okay? I caught the mess that they did advertising a private company on the Department of Homeland Security. And mind you this, Alejandro, when Randy was on the Department of Homeland Security, his buddy Zhao Jinwu sat on the IAF Incorporated in Delaware, an American company, Communist National, who is mandated by his country of origin to take your data through China National Intelligence Law, Article number 7. What does that tell you, sir? I don't know. Maybe you agree. Half a nut, fuck you. The thing about it is Phil Matheson, here he is in his glory. He is considered the Executive Director of Office of Standards, U.S. Department of Homeland Security, DHS. He was making $262,814 as a various, whatever various. It used to be a royalty payment. A royalty payment, for those of you who want to know what royalty payments are, that's a royalty payment. I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to hold it here. But yes, he's making $262,000 with his federal salary. And ANSI sets these people up, men and women in these federal agencies and corporations, with all these titles. Here is his title, Executive Director of the Office of Standards, U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Yet, you look at it and you find out that the Department of Homeland Security got hacked by China. Every one of those agencies that sit on ANSI have gotten hacked by China. Now we come to the pièce de résistance. I have customers who wanted to get involved with ISO 17025 for laboratory. So we looked it up, and this is what we found. Many rejections are happening, scandals are happening in accredited labs. We delved into it a little bit more, and we discovered that, here you go. You have a lot of rejections, a lot of recalls, a lot of skewing the data. And this happens in every lab, not just forensic labs. It happens in your blood test, urine test. You know, there's been cases that we've heard and seen, as a matter of fact, in different publications where you have blood testing facilities are throwing samples away and skewing the data. Okay, and it's absolutely appalling. You have a guy, Marvin Schechter, a attorney, gave a report to the state of New York that stated, in fact, ASCLD Lab, which sits on ANSI, it's owned by the American National Accreditation Board, which is also, ANSI owns that, so they all own each other. You also have ANAB, who issues a laboratory accreditation. You also have A2LA. A2LA was the one we were focusing in on because many of the federal agencies that sit at ANSI utilize A2LA. On top of that, they sit by sheriff's departments, forensic labs. They sit by the DFS, Department of Forensic Science, run by the FBI, where in 2015, ANAB had to retract their certification because they found such glaring discrepancies within the process. Now we're going to introduce you to Pamela Sale. And this is where the whole thing about Wuhan, China, and the release of the COVID virus, without a doubt, she claims in this sentence that it's plausible. Yes, it did come from Wuhan, China, or any lab, but Wuhan, China was the one where it probably originated. She said, one of the issues is that there is no commonly agreed upon set of standards that forensic labs around the country have to follow. Instead, there are informal guidelines that labs can choose to follow or not, which means, Alejandro, in the quality arena, when you have discrepancies like that, the certification process is skewed. And it's a failure. Okay, I've got 40 plus years in there, and when you have systematic failure, they will say, no, we certify the product, not the, we certify the system, not the product. And in reality, when you look at it, when you have systematic failure, you'll have product failure. We exposed the factor, Alejandro, of A2LA sitting on ANSI's board. We also saw that A2LA sat on the IAF, controlled by China from 2015 to 2021, just a mere year ago, which is a big deal. And a Miss Ashley Morton wrote underneath the video. She said, A2LA does not sit on ANSI. They are both American accreditation bodies with equal standing. So we showed her, and you saw you saw this. So what I did was I did the exposure on a Friday night. A Russ Chaney, who I didn't know at all, Alejandro, who is the chairman of, at the time, 2019, he is the chairman of ANSI's board. He is also, in 2022, the nominating chairman. So he called me up, and I will play it again for you, Alejandro, because you need to hear this, because I think it is absolutely deplorable. I'm going to let you listen to it twice. Half a nut, fuck you. And his lawyer, their lawyer, Jameson Carroll, of Carroll and Weiss in Atlanta, Georgia, had the audacity to say, after analysis, we were unable to identify any harassing or objectionable content in the brief audio file provided. I've had many people, Alejandra, ask me why I'm doing what I'm doing. As you know, it's not sour grapes. This happened 3 years ago. I figured that they would be demonstrative in their managerial skills, which they're not. That they would get me in there, get me on board to represent the small mom and pop shops throughout the world, throughout the country, as a matter of fact, because they need some sort of a voice to be heard by the OEMs. And they did not do that. They refused me. And it was Russ Chaney, because he was the chairman of the of ANSI's nomination committee, okay, for 2022. I do this because of integrity, honesty, and the truth. And we demand an apology, not a written one, a formal one, in person. Because any chairman to use this type of language on an audio file, because they have federal agencies on board trying to protect their tuchus, and if you don't know what tuchus means, it means ass, trying to protect their ass. And it doesn't work. It really doesn't. So I would say step up to the plate, which I don't like that term, nor do I like, it's not my wheelhouse. I usually say at those meetings when I hear that, it's not on my outhouse. Well, this is definitely in the outhouse. As a chairman, to use those words, and you have an individual who sits as an integral member on ANSI getting financially compensated, what is that saying about your skills? It's not doing too well for the Department of Homeland Security, and I'm going to leave it at that. My telephone number is 203-556-1493, or Daryl, TQRS@yahoo.com. And the final thing I'm going to say, Alejandro, is from Thomas Paine. It is impossible to comprehend the moral mischief, if I may so express it, that mental lying has produced in our society. When a man or woman has so far corrupted and prostituted the chastity of their mind as to subscribe their professional beliefs to things they do not believe, they have prepared themselves the commission for every other crime. I thank you.